Um, that's powered by the Transform You Media Network. I am with Kurt Roscoff and Denise Vargas today. And it's going goofy. But over to you, Ms. Denise. Bye. Or Kurt, whoever wants to.
Hello, everyone there in Facebook and YouTube. Eventually, we're going to be there. Thank you all for joining us. Like Emily said, really happy to have you and looking forward to a great conversation with Emily and Kurt and our other guests that pops in. So let's see, what should we talk about today? Actually, I do have a good topic. Since we do, focus on people with disabilities, all different disabilities around the world, because by the way, our show is global. One of the things that I've noticed is rent is so extremely high for anyone, but it is especially high for people with disabilities who, often live on a very low fixed income. And now I am blessed to be able to live in subsidized housing, but in the apartment that I live in, out of 101 apartments, I believe, exist here, there's only 10 wheelchair accessible units. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, it is such a shame that rent is so high for everyone, but for people with disabilities, we need to try and figure out a way to make it more accessible, financially accessible for them. Because oftentimes people are stuck sometimes in nursing homes because they can't get out because they can't afford an apartment. Or maybe they're living with family members and they really want to be on their own and be independent. So we really need to make more noise about this and bring more awareness and try and figure out a way that rather than having subsidized housing, maybe there's something else that we can, as a community, work on and help figure out a way that we can all be independent, right? We want to all be financially independent, of course, but at the very least, be living in your own space, right? Because once you're living in your own space, you feel more empowered. I know that when I moved out, I felt more empowered. I felt like, wow, now I'm really a grown up, right? Because that's really when you start feeling like you've reached the adult world, when you really start doing things independently. So that would be great to bring more awareness. So Kurt, what do you think about that? Tell us your thoughts.
Well, for sure, we are a long ways away from having options equitably available for people with disabilities as compared to, let's say, if we just talk about our country here in the USA, Americans that are not identified with a disability. It is very lopsided, and there's a history here that we're addressing, because it's not too many decades ago that if you go back to the days of institutionalization, we have the evidence there, the stories told, and just the facts of life, the way history has been lived out, which does still have its, prongs out there in society about, the the opportunity for people with disabilities to live the life, and including what their dwelling place is like. Because like in the days of institutionalization, and even still today, there still is a lot of concept that like 100% of people with disabilities only need a single bed, which means that it's a societal norm that people with disabilities are not viewed as having anybody that they would share a bed with. So a king size bed, a queen size bed, a double bed, these types of beds are not needed for people with disabilities. It's pretty routine that when people think of somebody with a disability, it's just a single bed. And I bring this up because it's so strikingly obvious when you get into the conversation that there is a bias between, people that don't have a disability and people that do, in terms of what type of place they need to be able to live in, and set up. And then you talk about, even if it's not about where we live, it's about where we're visiting. So even if it's the community of people that don't have a disability, there's the idea of visitability. It's what people with disabilities are encountering when they go and visit somebody they know, or they visit, relatives or whatever it may be. There's regular stories told that there's difficulty there when people with disabilities visit. So this is definitely an issue in terms of homes, kind of where we're negligent in making it favorable for people with disabilities under the terms of people with disabilities, because the battle cry by people with disabilities in advocacy is nothing about us without us. So we definitely have a long ways to go to open up the conversation to people with disabilities. And then when the conversation keeps going, that we're translating the talk of what we're hearing people with disabilities say to what society enacts to actually happen.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you say that. I myself am single. Ironically enough, even my queen size bed is still not big enough for me, because I do like to stretch out. So, but yes, absolutely. They do not see us as having relationships or even families, because as I mentioned, where I live, there are only 10 wheelchair accessible units, and they are all single bedrooms. There is not a one that has 2 bedrooms. So even if you did have a partner and you wanted to have children, you couldn't have children here. Where would they sleep? Right? They don't have another bedroom, a 2-bedroom apartment that's wheelchair accessible. And so, yeah, absolutely. And for sure, when I go and visit anyone, I have to see where they live. I have to see even things like doorways, right? That they're very narrow. You can't fit your wheelchair through them without scratching their doorways, and then you feel terrible for that. But absolutely, it's interesting, because I, as a person with a disability or a wheelchair user, I think about things like, even if you're not born with a disability, anyone can acquire a disability at any time for several reasons. But at the very least, what people need to think about when they're constructing homes and buildings and apartments and just anything that they're constructing in this day and age, we have to think about people who age into disability, because as you get older and you start losing the ability to do certain things, you might end up in a wheelchair. And therefore, you want to make it so that, when people are constructing, what we need to really bring awareness also to is universal design, so that anybody can use it, whether you have a disability or not. And that's something that I would love for people to really start thinking about. universal design. Because absolutely, when I want to go and visit people, like even you, Chris, if I want to go visit you, would I be able to get in? Right? It's like, do you have steps? Can I get into your bathroom if I have to go to the bathroom? It's like just things like that. It's like, yes, it's a person's private home, but if we move into new construction, like I said, into the future, think newness. And it's funny because when you said that we are in the US, it's true. We are known as the new world, right? And yet somehow we've fallen behind on so many things. But, yes, in newness, let's build with universal design in mind. Back to you.
Yeah, I know when I moved out, I was happy to move out. But it wasn't until later, until it probably wasn't the usual age of, it's probably a lot older than usual, than what maybe the typical, what do you think of the typical time that you would move out? But I was still happy to move out and be on my own.
And isn't that like so empowering to know that it's your place? You do whatever you want, however you want. And again, it's just like it might have taken you a while to get your own place than the non-disabled individual would have. Because for me also, I moved out when I was 26. So at that point, most people already have their own families, maybe starting their own families. But for sure, so it would just be great to be able to know that the ability is there. We have more than 10 units in one apartment. Why can't you make all the apartments accessible, right?
Yes. I have Barbara joined us. Hi, Barbara.
Hey, Barbara.
There we go. Now I'm unmuted and I can be seen. Hello. I am so sorry, guys. First, my phone discharged and then I had the hardest time. I'm in Tennessee and the time is different here, So like when I would get on at 3:00 at home, here I'd have to get on at 2:00 because I'm on the same time zone as you guys. And then I found I had to find a charger, and that's my story and I'm sticking to it. I find whenever I have one excuse, there's usually about 5. I don't know why, but hello. Yeah. Yeah. I want to be like, a trustworthy, responsible person in society, contributing equally.
We're glad you're here, though.
Thank you. Trying to do my part. But I feel like what I would want to say today, almost ranges on like spooky.
One of the things that we were just talking about is accessible apartments, accessible homes, wheelchair accessible homes. And we were talking about, wouldn't it be great if we had universal design so that even someone that might age into a disability would still be able to, go and move around their home because it's already accessible for perhaps a wheelchair that they might need later on in age. And we were also speaking about how society doesn't see that a person who has a disability would have a relationship, would have a partner, would have a family. And a lot of these apartment units, particularly the one that I live in, it's one bedroom. And they don't think that you're going to need more than one bedroom with maybe a twin size bed.
Mhm.
We were talking about bringing more awareness to that, to society, and as a community, how we can maybe try and change the mindset of people, and certainly government, so that we can think about making things equal to everyone.
Yeah, that's so important. And people don't want to think, they don't want to realize we get old faster than we think, you know. And then it's like everybody could use like a grab bar, you know, in the shower, you know, by the toilet, things like that, you know, at some point in time. And my dad fell in the shower. It's like, you know, everybody will need that, you know. And if we're not just, you know, if we're thinking of people aging too, I think you said that, you know, I think I heard you say that, then we'd be more conscious because we'd realize, you know, this is for everybody. And yeah, and I hear you, you know, I hear that's how come Kurt got into this, right? Because he saw it was a certain kind of prejudice, you know, prejudging who this person's going to be, what they're going to have, you know. And that's so unfair because we help create reality by how we judge it, right? By how we view it. I don't know who saw the movie What the Bleep Do We Know, but it was a great movie. Did you see it?
No, I have to look it up.
Yeah, it's What the Bleep Do We Know, or What the Bleep Do I Know? And it was three filmmakers who wanted to make a movie that was gonna change the world, you know, and they created a great movie that shows, you know, that shows science, you know, and in cartoon life. And they got the woman who's deaf, who's an actress. I know her first name is Marlene, I believe, but she's a very good actress. She did on Children of a Lesser God. And they had her be the star in it because they figured she would be the best person to help people feel, you know, to get the emotions through of what they're trying to communicate. And it's that we're so much more creative and powerful than we know. And we're just beginning to realize this. And we're beginning to realize that that part of what we see has to do with the viewer, and how they're viewing what's happening helps like to create that reality. I mean, this is like far out. And I said I wanted to be able to be far out today because I went to this Buddhist meeting, right? And this Buddhist leader who is somewhat obese, and that's something we really have to look at. We really, that's just such a terrible, it's just such a terrible disease, you know. And people don't realize it. People, you know, things people don't want to know. My friend used to talk about how people have virgin ears and eyes, and there's things they refuse to see. You know, they don't want to know, right? And I and I just got lost in that one because yeah, I had a friend Vicky who you know, she ended up dying like that, and the lack of support, the lack of community, the lack of understanding, you know, the way, you know, people prejudge, you know, was just terrible. And people not looking at the whole picture, not looking at the relationship that she and her daughter had, was extraordinarily beautiful in the way they could communicate, you know, and feel each other and laugh together. And she knew that by asking for help, it was a really good chance that they were going to lose that relationship. Her child would be put into foster care. And I'm kind of a little bit losing the train of thought. But so this guy, he's a Buddhist leader, but you know, he's on the verge of, well, I mean, if he got on the scale at Publix or something, you know, they say on those health things that he was obese. And he kept talking about how he likes to go to Publix because he loves the subs that they make there. And he could get a 6-inch, but he'll always get a foot long because as he's figuring it out, that's economically the best choice. And knowing that there's some kind of craziness there, you know, knowing that's him not making the best cause for his life, and finding ways to rationalize it or think around it. and what he's saying is kind of most of us are there, we're not bringing out our highest potential. We're not making the very best choices. And it's not him alone or me alone, as how we raise the vibration for like all of us, what we're saying, so we can all start working together. So it's not just a thought, but we actually start building the buildings, and start figuring out ways to work together to have the money not just going to building another road, like so much of the tax money keeps going to, because that's an easy thought. And I was told that by lifeguards in my area and by the garbage men in my area, that the people in government who are making the decisions where money goes, they're not talking to the people whose lives they're affecting, And yeah, so so this radio show is a great step right in that direction. We hope we get more people listening to us so we can start working together and making these changes happen. And hey, I'm so willing to work, if it comes to, I've always thought that construction was fun. I saw a woman who created a community for children, a community school, and she had the equipment to make their own bricks. They were like building their own buildings. And yeah, let's all be that. We're smart enough, right? We can be fast enough, though. We can all be part of the construction workers. We can all be part of the chefs. We can all be part of the teachers. People help people communicate, like lawyers are meant to, and help people heal. So yeah, I wanted to say that, and I thought when you talk about how we're all interconnected, and saying, why is this great Buddhist leader talking about his problem in public is getting the foot-long sub instead of the half-inch, because the 6-inch, because it makes more sense economically, and that's where a lot of us, I think, are at, and why we're not moving forward. We're getting hung up on these silly little things. Did I just make sense to anybody?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know what? One of the things that I heard, a couple of things I heard you say, it was so beautiful.
Thank
But when you said that people don't want to see or hear, and it's true. It's like if you choose consciously not to see it, you're choosing not to be aware of it. Subconsciously, you are aware of it, but you're trying to keep quiet about it and act as if you don't know this is happening, when truly you can see it. It's happening. But if you have it in your mind already that you're not going to pay attention to it, and therefore I don't know about it. If I don't know about it, I don't need to do something. I don't need to feel like I need to do something about it. Right.
If you're not going to have like an open mind about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Now I don't know about it. It doesn't affect me. I can't do anything about something I don't know about. But once you know it and you don't do anything about it, now you start feeling a little guilty. And then now you start feeling like, wow, I really should try and do something about that. I should be an ally to the people who need me, because I could eventually be one of those people. And that's what I love about Kurt, right? He saw the situation. He was there. He saw how unfair it was that he could ski. His friends could ski. His family can ski. But this one friend couldn't ski, right? They wouldn't allow him to go and participate in whatever else anybody else is doing. And once you know, you can't unknow something. It's there. It's going to be constantly eating away in your subconscious and then in your conscious mind. And then you're going to feel like, I cannot not do anything about it. I have to try and figure out how I can help, just like Kurt did. And then he made it his mission. And for those out there on Facebook, on YouTube, who do not know, Kurt does not have a disability, but he is one of our biggest supporter.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know that he didn't have a disability until, after a few conversations with him. I honestly thought, well, he's speaking so powerfully about, the community, the people with disabilities need this, and people with disabilities. I
Mhm.
for sure thought he had a disability.
Yeah.
And these are the types of people that we want as allies. We want all of us to help each other, and in all causes, not just the community of people with disabilities, but any community. If we join forces and help each other, we will all be equal. And that, just like you said before, it's about raising the vibration, putting the thought out there, and then putting action to that thought, making it your mission to help everyone, just like Kurt made it his mission to help people with
Mhm.
disabilities, to be our ally, right? That's what
Yeah.
we need to be together and raise the vibrations, just like you said. That was
And he
beautiful.
connected with Marcus from the Transform You. I mean, yeah, he's connected and made things happen, and how we become more like that. My brother, he's an author, and he's trying to fight climate change problems with writing a novel, because he said, you had a lot of problems. Migrant workers had a lot of problems, but then when the book The Grapes of Wrath were written, and that started becoming popular and circulating around, and after that, there were some changes. There were some important changes to help migrant workers. And he said Abraham Lincoln went to Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, and he said, "So you're the little lady that started the Civil War." And so by people somehow relating through a book, through falling in love with different characters or being attracted to different characters in the book, then it helps people see, and it helps people make change somehow.
That's beautiful.
And I'm seeing children's shows right now, for toddlers. They're making sure that they have, that everybody's being shown there, as part of the community. And there's some good things happening right now. Just shows for little ones. And then there's still the silly stuff, like where the road runner, where one character is chasing the other character and having all kinds of accidents and stuff, which I never could laugh at. I never could laugh at slapstick. But slowly, yeah, there are things that the kids are getting to see that respects their intelligence and their sensitivity, and it's going to help make a better future for everybody.
Absolutely. The other thing that you said, Barbara, that was so powerful was people who are prejudiced, prejudging. And,
Mhm.
the best way that we can get rid of prejudging is by asking questions, right? You're judging something that you don't know yet. So let's open up the conversation. Let's not be afraid to talk about whatever it is that we need. And on the
Mhm.
other side, the person that is prejudging, possibly, most likely because they don't know, right? Ask us questions. If you want to know something about a person with a disability, ask the person with the disability. Don't ask their family member, don't ask their friends, ask the person directly. And if you ask them directly, even like we were talking about before, in building new construction, new
Mhm.
companies, anything new that's coming out in the world, let's talk to that person with a disability and see how can we make this better. By the way, we created this. The bathroom is this big. What do you
Mhm.
think? And let that person go in there and see, can they turn their wheelchair around without bumping into things? If they need someone to go and help them in the bathroom, is there enough room? Is there
Mhm.
space to do whatever you need to do? That's what I'm saying. Like, let's stop the prejudging by
That's
asking the questions.
a big deal too. I had a friend in a wheelchair who showed me, but there was, yeah, what you're saying, there was no way that a bathroom, yeah, I've seen things like that a few times. And it's like, where were the engineers? How did this happen? That is so thoughtless. Yeah.
Exactly. I
So
remember
yeah, it's great you're saying this right now.
it's funny because I often go into a lot of bathroom stalls and they think it's accessible because the door is wide enough that you can get your chair in there. Yes, you can get your chair in there, but your foot pedal is literally touching the toilet. How
Mhm.
you can't even close the door. So how is that really accessible?
Mhm.
But when the laws were written, and this is the other thing that we need to think about as a society, when a lot of these laws were written, particularly when the ADA started, we love the fact that we have the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. However, things have changed. Disabilities have changed. Technology has changed. Wheelchairs that we're using now are very different than the wheelchairs that we used 30 years ago. So we need to upgrade. We need to rewrite. We need to, again, think about what's happening in today's world in order to fix it.
So we need to be talking to our commissioners, our governors, our mayors, right? We need to show up at those meetings and be able to speak up when they're trying to figure out, now what do we do with this tax money? Because they keep figuring, well, let's fix another road. That always seems to be happening. But yeah, we need to really create what was supposed to be first created, a democracy where all people were equal and everyone would have a voice in what was happening and everyone could be heard. But
Absolutely.
people, I think you ask most people, like, who's the commissioner, in your area, or who are, I think it's just that, I don't even know totally how it works, when's the last time you knew that there was going to be meeting and what was going to be spoken, what was going to be voted for. And yeah.
Very good.
Mhm.
Oh, go ahead.
I'll keep talking. So thank you. It's okay to interrupt me.
That's beautifully said, though, Barbara, beautifully said, because oftentimes people vote for the president, right? But they forget about all the other people that have the voice. We need to give them our voice. So we need to go from the smaller, right? Figure out who your commissioner is, figure out who your mayor is, figure out who everyone that needs to be your voice, because at the end of the day, the president is going to hear Congress. They're the ones that's taking our information they're the ones that's going to vote at the end of the day. So we need to vote for those people. We need to speak to them. We need to interact with them so that they can be our voices in Congress, our voices to the president.
And in our Toastmaster club, we learn how to, how to stay at the lectern until someone else comes up and you shake hands or bump elbows, whatever you need to do. And then and then to address each other, Madam Toastmaster, esteemed dignitaries and fellow Toastmasters, how to speak so that people will listen. This person knows what they're saying. This person knows how to speak. There's actually, a science and a talent and an art to that too. And if you have a voice that sounds apologetic and weak, even if you're brilliant, because I saw this before, this woman, she was so smart. She had all these degrees and what's going on at the ocean, what was going on with the king tides and the flooding in Florida. But people couldn't, it was hard to listen to her because she was apologizing so much. And her voice was like full of anxiety and pain and things like that, that made people not want to hear her. So yeah, the art of communication, the art of debate. this is an era that we're coming into where we're starting to realize how important that is. And you have a wonderful voice for communicating. I love listening to you speak. You speak with such, a melody, that's pleasant to listen to, and you make people feel good. And you speak clearly, and you pause in the right times. You don't use a lot of crutch words. I know if you've been in Toastmasters or, just from your need to be heard, you became a very good speaker.
Oh, thank you, beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, it's true because I love what you said, and I say something very similar to that, just in a different way. I always tell people, you'll get more bees with honey than you do with vinegar. So we just need to learn how to speak to people and express what we need without yelling and screaming. And yes, we want what we want and what we need, right? Because that it's not really just a want, it's a need.
Yeah.
But yes, the way you express yourself, you'll get a lot more done if you are calm and you're sweet about it.
Mhm. That was, I loved if you saw the Ruth Ginsburger movie, where the woman the lawyer that made a difference for social justice, for people that were caregivers, and what she had to learn to do when she was facing the opposition, the people that wanted to tear her thoughts down and poo-poo what she was saying, and win the fight, right? And I always told you have to think, do I want to win this battle or do I want to win this war? And she learned, I learned the importance of like empowering the people that are opposing you sometimes. And then the importance of, if you can get that person to laugh, then you've touched ground, you're on similar, humor is very local. And then you're connecting. And how hard that would be when you think these people are trying to make me lose this case, and they're like attacking her intelligence and all this. And that, I thought that was so brilliant. If she could take a breath and see past all that and say something that could actually make them laugh or smile, that would touch them that way. And yeah, she made a difference in the world, and that was a big part of how she did it, where she could get her opposition to start helping her.
I love that. So those are two movies I have to watch. Yeah, because I have not watched that one yet, but that was on my list to watch. So thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
But there definitely is an art to communicate, and Kurt has a lovely way of communicating. Like I said, especially since he does not have a disability, but he is here with us, always fighting our battles and helping bring awareness.
He has a good way of explaining things.
Yeah, good speaker. And then everyone should try to see the movie Caveman that Ringo Starr, the Beatles, created such a long time ago, because it's a good way to relax. I don't think there's any words in it that we know, but you come into this movie and then you learn how to speak cave language. And that was funny.
That one I've seen. That one was a funny movie. Yes.
Yeah.
Love it.
Sure, maybe you should learn how to talk caveman.
Hey, Emily, if you start speaking cave woman, I'll follow with caveman.
I suppose.
I love humor. Humor definitely is a connector. Like you said, when you can make someone laugh or even smile, right? There are sometimes that you come across people in the street and they're so serious and they have like this very serious look about them, and you smile and they might not smile back at you right away, but if you just keep smiling, eventually they're gonna smile, right? Or they're gonna at least want to say, "Can I help you?" And then you can even start up a nice little conversation with them. So it's just about giving them that entrance, right? That you can approach me.
Yeah, that's great. They say that a child that that sees their mom's smiling, approving face when they come home was never gonna, go too far off from where love is, where appreciation for humanity is, the importance of being able to do that. You have a beautiful smile in this picture I'm seeing. Like,
Thank you.
and I feel like I'm ignoring Emily. Ignoring Kurt. I tend to be a bit of a groupie.
Well, Emily
Sure,
is a rock
okay.
star.
Huh?
I was saying Emily is a rock star. She gets
Oh,
all this stuff
okay.
together, and she is definitely someone that you want to get to know.
Yes, I know. She gets things done.
So,
Garrett,
Emily, what do you think?
Garrett, you've been quiet today. Thoughts on the last however long conversation?
I'm running my stopwatch, and I figured, after Emily says about 5 minutes worth of stuff, that's when I was going to chime in.
Well then, Garrett, I don't know what I'm gonna do with you. But yeah, I think it's been a good conversation so far. But how's life otherwise, Barbara? What are you doing in Tennessee?
Oh, I'm watching two dogs so that my dog could take, her new baby and her 2-year-old to see my son-out-of-law's father, because he's sick right now. So they're going to have Thanksgiving together so he can meet his grandsons. And yeah, so I said, one way I could help is by watching the dogs so they could go. So I have a lot of time right now. I have, and I'm just praying. They're like, here's how you work the TVs, TVs in every room. And I'm like, no, I want to be creative. I want to be learning. I want to be creating. I want to be chanting. I'm a chanting maniac, nam myoho renge kyo. And I'm trying to encourage myself to take these dogs out for a long walk every day because it's good for all of us.
Yeah. I'm creative.
I was praying to be strong while I was here, and at home. And then it's amazing when the stuff you're praying for is actually happening, it's coming true. And then you have to tell yourself, it's okay to be this happy. This is what I prayed for. Your prayers are supposed to come true. So it's really okay that, that I'm feeling grateful, or that I'm feeling happy. I should actually build on this vibration and these feelings. And I feel that every time I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Part of the reason, yeah. One of the reasons why Janice called her business Live Creatively.
Yep, we definitely need to live creatively and be together in this big beautiful world of ours, that we can all again be equal. It's like we're all humans. We are just different, and that difference really is what makes the world so beautiful, right? All
Yeah.
the different cultures, all the different ethnicities, all just so much. And maybe in the next episode next week we can speak about immigration and how people came to this world, this new world. But that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, a whole nother conversation.
Yeah,
Important one too, because I keep worrying about like all those children at the Mexican border, the children that were being given to the soldiers that were leaving Afghanistan, the babies. And and the Holocaust, people had to do that with, just hoping that there'd be love out there and these kids are going to survive. And I wonder, hey guys, can we like put some money together and go there and help some of these kids? I see you know, in the United States, we have big homes with extra rooms and all, you know, but how to get the heart and the courage, you know, to do that. I don't-
Absolutely.
yeah. And I saw when I was at the Shakespeare Festival, and that was, where's that? In Ashland, Oregon, I believe. And there was a community there, and in the community, they were adopting children from around the world that needed help. And it was a very tight community. People, the women, like people doing yoga together and playing music and all. And that was so great. That was so great. I want to, you know, I want us to be more of that if we can be.
That's beautiful. You know, and it's interesting that you bring up adoption because
Mhm,
I've always wanted to adopt. However, again, as I mentioned, I live in a small apartment.
mhm,
It's only 1 bedroom. And, you know, one of the criteria of adopting is that they need to have their own room. And as they should, right? They're children, they need their own space.
mhm,
And they make it so difficult for someone. Well, first of all, if you're single and you're trying to adopt, it's very
mhm,
difficult. It's a bazillion times more difficult when you're single and disabled and need
mhm,
someone to help you, right? So their mindset is, well, how are you going to raise a child if you need so much physical help? And yes, I need a lot of physical help, but physical help is very different than them. They don't pay my bills. I pay my bills. They don't make my decisions for me. I make my decisions. If I was to raise a child, I would raise the child. They would still just, yes, they'll be my hands and legs as needed, just like they're my hands and legs as needed now in my life. But they do
mhm.
make it very difficult. So, you know, it's interesting that you brought that up, because adoption is, and that's another aspect of someone who has a challenge in their life, a disability. They really just strip you of all of um, what is available to the rest of the world for those people who don't
But
have.
you know, you might be surprised, because I was talking to a woman who's in protective services, and she was saying, you know, they're so desperate to find places where these children can go. That doesn't matter like how old you are. You know, that's what we were talking about, like age. But she says it doesn't matter. You know, there were kids in social services that, I mean, they didn't even have beds to sleep in. You know, so many children were showing up, and you know, without people to care, love them, or space. So you might be surprised about that one.
Well, absolutely, I completely agree with you that, and which is interesting that these children who need loving homes,
Mhm,
you know, who are not even sleeping in their own beds in these overcrowded facilities, but they still
mhm,
won't give you the opportunity to adopt because of your disability. So, and I say this because two of my friends who have disabilities,
mhm.
they actually had to go outside of the country to be
Yeah.
able to adopt. And again, this is what I'm saying is like, do not look at what I cannot do. Look
Mhm,
at what I can do.
mhm.
You know, I've
Yeah.
built a life for myself. I became very independent. Yes, with the help of uh, people who help me in my home to do physical things I cannot do, but I created my life. And,
Yeah.
you know, I hired the people who work for me. I've fired many people and I've
Mhm.
hired other people. So I am in 100% control of my life.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, a lot of times society still prejudge you, as you mentioned before.
Mhm.
And this is again, uh, uh, we just need to bring awareness to the world that you may need help with one or two or three things in your life or more, um, but you're still living your life independently if given the opportunity by, again, making universal design, making homes and apartments, affordable. Just again, it's like you said, raise vibration, speak to the
Mhm.
correct people that we need to speak to.
Mhm.
And that's the only way that we're really going to change the world. That's how we're going to get more Kurt's in the world.
Definitely.
So, Kurt, are you still with us?
I am still with us. Yes.
Yay.
So we're getting ready.
Just turned off his video.
We're getting close to the end of our show. I'd just like to get your thoughts on some of the things that we talked about, prejudgments, raising the vibration, raising awareness, communicating. So what are your thoughts, Kurt?
Well, since the conversation brought in adoption, I think that whole realm, I mean, obviously adoption is a great thing. We have a celebration of, World Adoption Day, and it is something to celebrate. And at the same time, there is aspect of our world culture and what nations are doing and what happens at regional state levels as far as these circumstances that bring parents or a mother to put their child up for adoption, because I I think there are far too many cases that because of our flawed economic systems and just flat out flawed society, and to look at these inequities that parents and a mother or father, when these adoptions are set forth, we know that a lot of times it's purely economic.
Yeah.
That it's only for the fact that they can't afford to support the child, that they know that the child is going to have a far better life with somebody who has the resources, the financial resources. And so the adoption is pursued for those economic reasons. And I think we as a society need to get around this humanitarian
Mhm.
concern that we do this to each other. We say that another party is more worthy of that child than the mother that gave birth to the child. Now, that's not to say like stop adopting because you're like feeding into adoption. I don't think that's what I'm saying here. I'm saying that, yeah, we should continue to promote adoption, to say the more we can have people going to adoption agencies and saying, I'd be more than happy to adopt, that's a great thing. But at the same time, I don't support that the conversation stops there. Because when we look at the stories of these children, and then say somebody adopts a child and then they go, a couple decades, or, they spend their whole childhood maybe not even realizing they're adopted. Now, I don't know that that's very common, but I perceive that it is possible. And then say an adult learns that they were adopted, and then they go to research why they were adopted, picture being united with mother and father, the blood parents, of a person. And then they learn that the only reason they couldn't keep them was for financial reasons, couldn't hold a job, couldn't keep money in the bank account, couldn't put food on the table. So figured the only way to be responsible would be to put the child up for adoption. So I think it all goes hand in hand, that when we talk about these issues, that it is a social work, social mission, social enterprise, and in some cases might say a social ministry, that we do live out our lives permitting inequity routinely. It's everywhere we look, and everybody's got their own issues, their own concerns. The only one that's going to take care of number one, meaning ourselves, is ourselves. So there is that part of life where we do have to watch how much we distract ourselves from our own issues. But on the other hand, I promote that there's a lot of negligence. So like with what we do at the Happy Neighborhood Project, I'm not afraid. Like Emily was on a follow-up conversation with me yesterday, and I was telling the professional who happened to be from Canada that it's about, that it's permissive negligence, and to me, that's a huge issue that I think goes along with, in past shows, I've been, with other shows we've been doing here at World of Ability Podcast Network, I've been talking about cancel culture. That when a person of whatever characteristic shows up to a group that maybe doesn't match that characteristic, that it's such a big thing that if you go onto Wikipedia and you start Googling, that there's a whole realm of a topic to research about cancel culture, about how a person can show up and be canceled or ostracized by the group. And for sure, in terms of youth and in schools and in terms of peer pressure, this is stuff that can happen with youth, and it also happens in the adult community, because where are the kids learning it? The kids are learning it from the adult community, the adult pop culture, the movies, the TV, the just things happening with people, adults close to them in their lives. This is stuff that happens. So I think it's important to figure out how we're going to support each other. And, and that's what I report, is that the disability community has been great to support me. I've learned a lot in the last, 10, 15 years from the disability community, and it's allowed me to make major radical changes, including the overnight change I made 8 years ago. So it's these type of personal experience that I think are going to give rise to what we see at the macroscopic level, a widespread thing that you start seeing it covered on like magazine, like TV magazine shows like 2020 on TV, or whatever like that. And that through this podcasting that we see a widespread narrative that it's kind of the buzz of the masses. And that's why I got into mass media. I got into radio and TV and podcasting and these platforms that reach a lot of people, because I think that's what's needed. We need the ideas to get out there far and wide. And I think that's what we're doing here. So Emily, I bring it back to you as podcast engineer and chief moderator, co-moderating with Denise. How are you finishing up the minutes of this episode?
I just wanted to thank everybody. Well, thank Barbara and Denise and Gary for being on the podcast today, as well as thanking everybody who has tuned in. And also big thanks to Marcus Hart and the rest of Transform You Media Network for their making this possible, as a podcast possible. And one last kind of thing I wanted to bring up, and Kurt, you let me explain this. Kurt and I are involved with a group of a few guys out in Connecticut who have written a couple books, and one they're running a Kickstarter event right now to get their second book published and out to everybody. And they're looking to raise $10,000 or raise $12,000. And Garrett, do you want to explain this, please?
Well, yeah, I mean, a Kickstarter is what it is to put it out there on, like say with book publishing, there's an initial order that needs to be placed with a publisher. And so they have these thousands of dollars that need to be raised, basically, which amounts to pledge purchases. So it becomes a group purchase that then gets placed with the publisher, and the books get published, and then away we go. And then we have a book that is established in publishing, and orders can keep coming in because we overcame the initial costs of being in publication. So that's kind of what we're hoping here, is that the Kickstarter for Pulling Each Other Along, the book authored by Doug Cornfield, which in it includes some stories, the whole thing of pulling each other along, inspired by Dave Clark, who is the only professional baseball player to perform baseball career, pro baseball work from playing from crutches. And so Dave Clark, has polio. And so that's where, in terms of not using crutches, just was not in the cards for Dave Clark. But he had so much of a desire to play baseball, even though he was to play baseball in crutches, he made it work, and he had his heart in it that much. Actually, a very phenomenal baseball player playing from crutches. And so if you're not familiar with the story of Dave Clark, I encourage you to go out there and Google him as a pro baseball player, and go ahead to pullingeachotheralong.com and keep with us here and help us reach people. We hope that thousands of people in the next 10 days can learn about this Kickstarter and push us over the top in getting enough of these orders and pledge purchases of the book, which we know books don't cost that much. And then in terms of the Kickstarter, we're hearing it be that even if people are donating like $25, into the Kickstarter and stuff like that, that makes a big difference. So we're figuring there's a lot of people out there that would be happy for what Pulling Each Other Along is to donate $25.
Yeah, something is better than nothing.
So we would Google, so we would Google the name Dave Clark. How do we get in touch? How do we do it?
If you wanted to look up the Pulling Each Other Along, otherwise I do have the Kickstarter link. I'm gonna put it in the chat for you or email you. If you want to go donate to that directly, like right away. Otherwise, if you wanted to look up anything about it, type in like Dave Clark or the Pulling Each Other Along, or Doug Cornfield. I should bring up stuff about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, just put the top link is where you can donate. We encourage everybody to join us again next week, same time, same place. And Kurt, do you have any last words of ending?
Well, I'll add to the thanks of everybody watching and listening to this show and ongoing support. So the Kickstarter link that Emily referred to is kickstarter.com/projects/PEOA for pulling each other along /pulling each other along. So kickstarter.com/projects/PEOA/pulling each other along. And other than that, if you have any comments,
Thank
questions, concerns, anything I can do in
you.
good customer service fashion, feel free to give me a call at 262-372-1SKI. That's 262-372-1754. And email Kurt, Kurt, at thedisabilitychannel.us.
Until next time. See you guys next week.